Hello again. In this video we're going to learn about conditionals or ifs. And first let's make sure we review a little bit about what we've already done. We have so far seen how to define methods such as turn right, in which whenever we define a method or declare a method, the body of our method, the part between the braces, consists of a sequence of statements such as, in this case, turn left 3 times, or in general, it turns out any statement always consists of. So these, let's label these are statements, and a statement, so far, we've only seen one kind of statements, and that's a method call. So one kind of statement is a method call, where we call a method, such as turn left, and a method call consists of a file name, a period, a method name, and then 2 parentheses, semicolon. So on here we put the name of our file, some file name, and in this blank we fill in the name of a method. So for example, our file might be robot and our method might be turn left, or our file might be I don't know, maybe I call my file Dave, because Dave is a nice name. In which case, if I declared turn right in the Dave file, I would write Dave.turnRight, open paren, close paren, semicolon, whenever I wanted to turn right by turning left 3 times. So that's all I know how to do so far in Java, and we'd like to expand that, and in particular we'd like to expand that because there's some very useful problems that I don't know how to solve yet. So let's take a look at one. So here is, I have my robot, and my robot is tasked with the problem of completing this room, right? The robot has purchased this brand new house, and he's very disappointed to discover that actually there are holes where there should be walls, and that's going to let in all sorts of rodents, and it's going to be a lot more expensive to air condition with all the air leaking out. So the robot's task is to fill in all of these walls. Now the robot can't actually place a wall, but it can do the next best thing. We could do something like move the robot into that spot and make that cell dark, like so. And recall that if I make it dark a second time and it's already dark, I get an error message. It tells me it's already dark. And an error message would be a bad thing, because if I reach an error, my program will just stop. It won't continue and do the rest of the work. Likewise, if I try to move into a wall or move off the screen, like so, I get an error that the robot attempted to move off the screen, and that's also bad, so we want to be careful of those things. So the problem is, the robot is supposed to fill in all of these open cells with dark squares, and so we could certainly write a long crazy program that would move the robot over here, make it dark, then move the robot over here, make this cell dark, move the robot over to this square, make it dark, and so on, filling in all these dark squares until we have a nice continuous border and our robot is safely imprisoned in his new home. But the problem with that approach is, although it might be great for this particular room, make a note of what this room looks like right now, it's not going to work. Okay, Java's being a little slow here. Sorry, Dr. Java's being a little slow. Here we go. It's not going to work for this room. This room also is the same dimensions and is missing some walls in various places. Actually, some of those missing walls are already completed with dark squares. So the robot would only need to darken these 2 squares over here, this one here, here, and here to complete his room. And if I were to use what I know now about Java, I would have to write a completely different program to fill in these walls for this room than I would to fill in the walls of the room that we saw just a moment ago. And that's not a very good thing. I don't want to have to write a different program every time I have a very slightly different situation, because it seems like the robot is essentially solving the same task in both of these situations, completing a room of a given dimension, and there's just a slight variation in terms of whether there's already a wall or whether there's a light or dark square there. So that's the problem we're faced with. And in fact, at first, I think let's focus just on, here we go, just on the situation where none of the squares are dark yet. There's either walls or not, and if there's no wall, we have to make that cell dark. And we want to know, how do we write this program so that it can handle both of these situations? And in fact, many situations, right? There could be a blank, a wall, or a dark square here. That's 3 possibilities. And there's, let's see, 5, 10, 15, 20 locations where I could have 3 possibilities. That's 3 to the 20th possible scenarios. Let's see, I happen to know how to use Java. Don't do this at home. To find 3 to the 20th. 3 to the 20th is about 3 billion. It turns out 3.5 billion. So we do not want to write 3.5 billion programs. So there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way. And anytime we're tempted to write duplicate code, such as 3.5 billion programs, we think to ourselves, there's got to be a way to exploit this powerful computer that I paid so much good money for. Oh, that's my phone ringing, but we're going to ignore it. You might hear some ringing for a moment. How do I exploit this computer to solve those 3.5 billion different situations without actually writing 3.5 billion programs? And it should strike you that what we really want to be able to do is test. Is there a wall here? Is this square already dark? Right? In fact, those are the 2 major things we would really like to be able to test. Let's go back here. Is there a wall? And actually, it shouldn't be, is there a wall where the robot already is, because the robot can't be in a wall. So is there a wall in front? Or, to put it another way, is the front clear? And we want to be able to know, is the robot on a dark square? And if we could test those 2 conditions, we would be in good shape. Because if you can test if you're on a dark, we can presumably figure out that if you're not on a dark, you must be on a light. And if the front is not clear, it must be blocked. And so sure enough, we can test those things in this little world I've given us. So I'll show you how. So here's the robot slightly off the screen there. And if we want to know, is the front clear, we can write front is clear, like this. And I'll explain more about what I'm doing in a moment. And when I ask the computer front is clear, I'm going to get back an answer. And the answer now is true because the front of the robot is indeed clear. If we were to turn this robot and move him to a position where he's now blocked, here he's blocked by the edge of the world, and I ask, is the front clear? So I write robot.front is clear. It tells me false. It tells me false because the front is not clear. There's the edge of the world there. And I guess I better show you that if we're facing an actual wall, not just the edge of the world, and we ask if the front is clear, we're also going to get false. The front is not clear. If we turn left to the opening again and ask front is clear, the answer is true again. So we can test if the front is clear. We can also test if the robot is on dark by writing robot.onDark. So right now the robot's not on dark, so the answer will be false. And if we make that square dark, now it's dark, and we test if the robot's on dark. By the way, I should tell you, if you're using Dr. Java, you can use the up and down arrows to cycle through things you've already typed, and that if it looks like words are just appearing on the screen very rapidly, that is what I'm doing. So let's see, is the robot on dark? True. Okay, now, one thing you may notice is this looks an awful lot like a method call. It looks like I have a file name, dot, and a method name, and I do. And we're going to look at how to define our own methods that give back answers like true or false in a moment. But I don't want to fixate on that just yet, because we can actually get quite far without understanding that. It is interesting that sometimes I've written semicolons and sometimes I haven't, and I will explain that. The thing that should be really bothering me is, yeah, I can ask if I'm on a dark square or if the front is clear, but how on earth is that going to help me? I mean, how would that go in my program? How do I say when I am on dark, do something different than when I'm not on dark? So that's really the problem that I want to solve, and that means I need to know a little bit more Java. And in fact, I'm going to need to know about this thing called an if. But before we go there, let's summarize a little bit. So I said these things are statements, and I didn't really say what a statement is. So let me give you a definition of a statement, or maybe not so much a definition, but what a statement does. You execute a statement, and when you execute a statement, you execute it for its side effect. A statement has a side effect. So let me explain. A side effect of asking the robot to turn left is that the robot is now facing a different direction than he was originally. And likewise, a side effect of robot.makeLight is that the square the cell is on, click, is now light. And a side effect of robot.move is that the robot is now in a different position. So that's what we mean by a side effect. Programs consist primarily of two main pieces. One is the statement, and we've just seen one kind of statement so far, but all statements are executed for their side effects. The other piece that we're going to see a lot of are expressions. So an expression is something that we evaluate to get a value. Java will evaluate an expression to get a value. And we've now seen a couple examples of expressions. Robot.onDark and robot front is clear are apparently expressions. We evaluate them and we get a value. And we've actually seen some examples of values. Values might include true and false. Although it will turn out there are many other kinds of values. Numbers can be values, strings, words can be values, all sorts of things will be values. In fact, objects will turn out to be values, arrays, all sorts of fancy things. But before we get there, we've got statements which we execute for their side effect, and those are these things where we wrote the semicolons at the end. And we have expressions that we can use to test some condition or get an answer, because some expressions will give us fancier things other than trues and falses. Like, for example, we'll later see that, for example, 2 plus 3 is an expression, and when I evaluate it, I get an answer of 5. So in the next video, we'll see how can we put expressions into our program so that we can test if something is on, if the robot's on dark, if the front is clear, and use that to actually solve the problem at hand. I will see you in the next video.